Good evening, and welcome back to Untold Nightmares. Tonight we're venturing deep into the forgotten highways and hidden backroads of America. Roads where detour signs lead to places that don't exist. Where abandoned gas stations still glow in the dark, and where bridges long collapsed somehow rise again, waiting for the next traveler who takes the wrong turn. What you're about to hear are not campfire tales. These accounts come from real people, drivers, travelers, locals, who swore what they saw was no dream. Stories of vanishing towns, haunted rest stops, and ghostly figures that follow you long after you've left the road. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Untold Nightmares for more true horror that lingers long after the screen goes dark. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next trip down a road you'll wish you never found. Now, let's start our journey with the bridge outside Dry Creek. The first thing I remember is the sound of children singing. Not happy singing. Not like a choir or kids at recess. This was broken, flat, almost whispered through water. A tune that clung to my skin and made every hair stand up. By the time I realized it was coming from my own car radio, turned off, dead silent minutes before, I was already halfway across the bridge. A rusted steel truss bridge stretched across a canyon I didn't recognize. My headlights caught beams scarred with rust, rivets eaten away, steel blackened by decades of neglect. My hands were locked on the steering wheel, but the engine wasn't running. The dashboard was dark. And yet the car rolled forward, slow and steady, like unseen hands were pushing it. I leaned into the mirror, and that's when I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them. Small, pale, dripping wet. They walked in a perfect line down the center of the bridge, bare feet silent on the steel. Their heads hung low, hair plastered to their gray faces, and when the first one lifted its chin into the glow of my headlights, I saw two hollow sockets where its eyes should have been. Water poured from them like tears. That's where the nightmare truly began. But if you want the whole story, how I ended up on that bridge in the first place, we need to go back to the night it all started. I was 27 that summer, working as a field technician for Tucson Power. Long hours, long drives, not much of a life outside of chasing down broken transformers and deadlines in forgotten corners of Arizona. Most nights, I didn't mind. There's something hypnotic about the desert at night, headlights cutting a tunnel through endless darkness, radio static buzzing like white noise, the stars spread overhead in a way that makes you feel small. But that night was different. I'd been called out to Wilcox for an outage. By the time I wrapped up, it was past midnight. I'd been awake close to 20 hours, running on gas station coffee and vending machine snacks. My eyes burned. My back ached. All I wanted was to get home to Tucson, crash on my bed, and sleep like the dead. The fastest way back was simple. I-10 west, straight shot. But 20 miles in, I saw the sign. Flashing amber lights, bold black letters. Bridge work ahead. Use alternate route. I cursed under my breath. I knew the stretch of road it meant. If that bridge was closed, it meant a detour across one of the old backroads. A pain, but better than sitting on the highway till sunrise. So I slowed, took the exit. That's when I saw it. A small wooden sign, barely visible in the moonlight. 2 words painted in peeling white. Dry Creek. I'd driven this area a dozen times. Never once seen that sign. I turned anyway. At first, it was just another forgotten road. 2 cracked lanes. A faded yellow stripe barely clinging to the asphalt. Desert brush thick on either side, rising like walls. My headlights stretched far into the dark, but caught nothing but dust and rock. But the deeper I drove, the stranger it felt. The stars overhead dimmed. Not like clouds were covering them, just gone, one by one, until the sky felt hollow. The air pressing through the vents grew heavy, damp, wrong for desert summer. My phone slipped from one bar of service to no signal and stayed there. Then my odometer glitched. It ticked forward normally, then jumped backwards half a mile, then corrected itself. I rubbed my eyes, muttering that I was exhausted. But 5 minutes later, I passed the same mile marker twice. Same dented post, same faded number, mile 12. And on the second pass, there was someone standing there, a man. He didn't move as I approached, didn't flinch when my headlights hit him square. His clothes looked wrong, like something out of a 1970s yearbook. Wide-collared shirt, jeans belted high. His face was blank, expressionless. And as my car passed, I realized he wasn't even looking at me. He was looking past me, into the dark road ahead. My gut clenched. Every instinct screamed, "Don't stop." So I didn't. Another mile down, the air shifted. It smelled wet, like rain-soaked pavement. But the desert was bone dry. I checked the sky, clear, and then condensation misted across my windshield, smearing under the wipers like fog. I leaned closer. That's when I froze. For a split second, I saw it, like a child's face pressed against the glass from the outside. Round cheeks, empty eyes, mouth open as if whispering. I slammed the brakes. Tires skidded. My seatbelt bit into my shoulder. When the car jolted to a stop, the windshield was clear again. Just the road ahead, stretching into blackness. I wanted to turn around. God, I wanted to. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, the road behind me was gone. Not hidden, not swallowed by fog. Gone. The beams of my taillights lit nothing but dry brush where the asphalt should have been. So I drove forward. That's when I found the gas station. It stood at a bend in the road, canopy rusted, pumps bent and broken, windows boarded over. Abandoned except the door hung open, and faint light spilled out onto the dirt. I pulled in, because what else could I do? My gas gauge hovered near empty. My nerves were shot. Maybe, I told myself, there'd be a payphone. Maybe someone lived upstairs. The second I stepped out, the air changed. It was colder here, damp, clinging. I pushed the door open, and it groaned like it hadn't moved in years. Inside, dust lay thick on every surface. Empty shelves lined the walls. A counter sat beneath a buzzing, fluorescent light. I called out, "Hello?" No answer, just the hum of the light. I stepped toward the counter, and that's when I saw it. Names, carved into the wood, dozens of them, etched deep, some with dates. 1978, 1985, 1993, and one that froze me in place, 2009, Eric, my name. I stumbled back, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I'd never been in this place before, never carved anything here, and yet there it was, clear as day. The light overhead flickered, buzzed, then snapped off. Darkness swallowed the room, and in that darkness, I heard it. The sound of children singing, soft, broken, slurred through water. The same lullaby I'd hear again on the bridge. I bolted, back in the car, ignition stuttering, finally roaring to life. I peeled out of that lot and barreled down the road, refusing to glance in the mirrors. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the wheel. The asphalt narrowed, trees rising close on either side, until the beams of my headlights struck metal. The bridge, a steel truss, old, rusted, beams groaning under the strain of decades. The moment my tires hit it, silence swallowed the world. No crickets, no wind, no hum of the engine, just silence. Halfway across, the car shuddered, coughed, died. Headlights cut out, dashboard dark. Radio dead silent until it wasn't. Static. Then voices. Children's voices singing that same lullaby. I gripped the wheel, too scared to breathe. My eyes lifted to the rearview mirror, and there they were. Dozens of small figures, gray and dripping, walking in a perfect line toward me. Bare feet silent, empty eyes streaming water. Every figure followed. The car rolled forward without power. The steering wheel stiff in my hands, the engine dead, every dashboard light gone. My headlights flickered weakly, just enough to paint the outlines of the rusted beams around me. The bridge groaned like it hated my weight, like it would tear free from its bolts and plunge me into the black below. And behind me, they kept coming. Dozens of small, pale figures, soaked and dripping, their bare feet padding against the steel without a single sound. They didn't stumble. They didn't hesitate. They just walked, perfectly in step, heads bowed. And as the first row reached the back of my car, the radio snapped alive again, blaring that same lullaby. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The song wasn't just coming from the speakers. It was in my chest, in my skull. A muffled chant slurred through water, pounding like a second heartbeat. I grabbed the door handle, yanked it open, and stumbled onto the grating. My boots slipped, almost pitching me face first into the gaps between the steel. Below, I saw nothing. Not water, not earth, just blackness. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen. The air was cold, heavy, reeking of pond rot and rust. My breath came out in clouds that vanished too quickly like the night was swallowing them. Then, movement. The closest figure stepped forward into my fading headlights. A little girl. Her hair was matted into braids clinging to her cheeks, her dress stained and torn. She lifted her face toward me, and though her sockets were empty, I knew she was staring. Her mouth opened. Water spilled out, running down her chin. "Come with us." The words didn't sound like a child's. They were deep, guttural, like someone speaking through a throat full of mud. I bolted. I sprinted toward the far end of the bridge, boots hammering against the grating, lungs burning. Every step echoed too long, like the sound was bouncing through a cavern instead of open air. My legs pumped, arms pumping harder, but when I looked up, the end wasn't closer. I kept running. My knees screamed, sweat ran cold down my spine. But the exit, the far side of the bridge, never got nearer. The beams above me blurred together, repeating like I was running in place. Behind me, the voices grew louder. Not singing anymore, chanting, dozens of drowned voices rising and falling in a rhythm that didn't belong to any language I knew. My name tangled inside it, slipping out between the syllables. Eric. Eric. I stumbled, went down hard on my knees, the steel grating biting deep. My palms scraped bloody as I pushed myself up. And when I looked around, my stomach turned. The bridge was gone. No beams, no road. Just endless strips of steel floating above a black ocean that stretched in every direction. My car was gone. The canyon below, gone. Only water, swallowing the horizon. And standing in a perfect circle around me were the children, soaked, eyeless, whispering my name in voices that weren't their own. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, rocking forward like I could shut them out. But they stepped closer. The grating beneath me shuddered with every step. I screamed, begged them to stop, begged anyone to help. That's when the girl leaned close again, the one with braids. Her cold breath brushed my ear. "You were supposed to drown too." I don't remember much after that. Just the sensation of falling, cold water swallowing me whole, pressure crushing my chest, my lungs on fire. I fought to breathe, to claw my way up, but the water kept pulling, dragging me deeper. And through the black, I saw their faces all around me, mouths open, water pouring out. When I came to, it was morning. I was lying on a dirt road, skin clammy, clothes soaked through like I'd been submerged for hours. The sun was rising over the desert hills, painting the brush in gold. My car was gone. The bridge was gone. I staggered to my feet and walked until I found a diner. My legs felt like rubber, my chest raw, but somehow I kept moving. The waitress froze when she saw me, coffee pot slipping in her hand. A man in his 60s, the manager maybe, pulled me into a booth and demanded to know what happened. When I told him I'd taken the Dry Creek detour, his face went white. There hasn't been a road through Dry Creek since '78, he said. And then he told me the story. In 1978, a school bus carrying 30 children and a driver tried to cross the old truss bridge outside Dry Creek. The steel had been weakened by floods that spring. Halfway across, the whole thing gave way. The bus plunged into the river below. None of them made it out alive. They never rebuilt it, the man said quietly. Closed the road, pulled it from maps, but people still see it. The bridge, the road, even the gas station. It shows up for travelers who take the wrong turn. I asked how many people. He shook his head. More than we ever got back. The waitress, pale as paper, set down a cup of coffee in front of me with trembling hands. You said they whispered your name. I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. She glanced at the manager, who only stared back at me. That means they wanted you, he said flatly. Count yourself lucky you woke up on the dirt. Some don't. I pressed him for more, but he wouldn't say another word. Just clapped me on the shoulder and told me to go home. I left the diner with my head spinning, every nerve in my body buzzing like live wire. To this day, I don't know how I survived. I never saw my car again. And I don't drive back roads at night anymore. But every now and then, when I'm parked alone in the dark, my radio crackles. A lullaby seeps through the static. Off-key, broken, drenched in water. And I know if I ever hear my name again, if those voices ever find me one more time, I won't walk away twice. The first time I heard the name Ashwood Pines, it was coming out of my GPS speaker in that cold, robotic voice. I never typed it in, never seen it on a map, but when the route recalculated and told us to continue through Ashwood Pines, something in my stomach knotted up. It was late July of 2016, and 4 of us were on a cross-country drive. Me, my roommate Nate, his girlfriend Rachel, and my best friend since middle school, Brian. We'd been on the road for 12 hours already, somewhere between Kentucky and West Virginia, exhausted, and riding that punch-drunk energy you get after too much gas station coffee. The plan was simple: make it through the Appalachians before sunrise, crash in a cheap motel, then push through to Ohio the next day. Except somewhere past midnight, the interstate closed for construction. Big orange barrels, blinking detour arrows, lanes merging into darkness. We cursed, groaned, but followed the signs off the main highway. The GPS rerouted, and that's when it spoke the name. Continue straight on Ashwood Pines Road for 14 miles. Where the hell is Ashwood Pines? Nate muttered. He was driving, knuckles white on the wheel. I've never even heard of it. None of us had. I checked my phone. No bars. Rachel tried hers. Same thing. The car's dash GPS showed the route, but the map was blank. Just our little arrow floating across gray nothing. We should have turned around. God, we should have. At first, the road seemed harmless. Narrow 2-lane, trees pressing close, the kind of back road you'd expect in the mountains. No streetlights, no signs, just endless black forest swallowing the headlights. But after 10 minutes, Rachel leaned forward between the seats and whispered, "Do you guys see that?" At first, I thought she meant deer. But then I saw it too. Cabins. Dozens of them, tucked back in the trees. Some with porches sagging, windows shattered, roofs caved in. Others still intact, curtains drawn tight, though no light shone behind them. They weren't lined up like a neighborhood. They were scattered, like the woods had grown up around them. "Looks abandoned," Brian said, trying to sound casual. But I could hear the tension in his voice. We drove on. The deeper we went, the stranger it got. Signs nailed to trees flashed in the headlights. Faded wood planks with words burned into them. Ashwood Lumber Co. Keep out. They never left. Rachel whispered, "What does that even mean?" No one answered. About 5 miles in, we saw the first light. A warm, flickering glow deep in the forest. At first, I thought it was a lantern. But as we passed, it stretched upward, like firelight. Shadows of tall, thin shapes flickered against the trees, moving in ways that didn't look like flames. Campers, Nate muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. 2 minutes later, another light. This one closer, a cabin with a window glowing orange. Just one. No cars in the drive, no sign of life, but the curtain rippled slightly, like someone had just moved behind it. Rachel begged Nate to keep going. He did, but the road twisted, climbing higher, and the forest grew denser. Our high beams caught movement between the trunks, figures stepping back into the shadows as we passed. Too tall for children, too stiff for hikers, just watching. When I glanced back through the rear window, I saw pinpricks of light sparking to life. Dozens of them, glowing between the trees. Lanterns, torches, and they were following. We tried not to panic, just focused on the road, praying it would spit us back onto the highway, but the GPS only repeated the same command over and over. Continue on Ashwood Pines Road for 9 miles, then 8, then 7. It felt like an eternity. Finally, we rounded a bend and saw it, an old wooden sign spanning the road like a gateway arch. The letters carved deep, half rotted away, but still visible in the beams of our headlights. Welcome to Ashwood Pines. Rachel whimpered in the back seat. Brian muttered, "Nope, nope, turn around." But when Nate spun the wheel into a U-turn, the road behind us was gone. Not just hidden. Gone. Where the asphalt should have been, there was nothing but trees, pressed so thick no headlights could penetrate them. We sat there in silence, 4 of us breathing hard, staring at a wall of forest where the road had been seconds ago. And then the radio crackled. Not music, not static. A voice, low, male, raspy like dry leaves scraping over stone. "You shouldn't have come here." We screamed at Nate to drive, and he did, tires squealing as he shot under the wooden arch. The car rattled over cracked asphalt deeper into Ashwood Pines. The cabins grew closer now, leaning in over the road, windows boarded, doors chained shut. But here and there, I swore I saw curtains twitch. And the lights followed, torches weaving between the trees, keeping pace with us. By the time we reached what looked like a town square, we were shaking. The car idled in the middle of an open space surrounded by buildings, an old general store, a church with its steeple broken, a diner with a neon sign buzzing faintly, though no power lines reached it. We should have kept driving, but a figure stepped into the road ahead of us. A man, tall, shoulders hunched, clothes torn and filthy. His face was hidden under a brimmed hat, shadow cutting across his eyes. He lifted one hand and pointed at us. Behind him, more figures emerged from the alleys and doorways, dozens of them, silent, watching. The torches closed in from the forest, and the GPS spoke again, voice flat, mechanical, final. Destination reached. The GPS went silent after those 2 words. Destination reached. None of us spoke. Nate's hands gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles looked bone white. Rachel whimpered in the back seat, clutching Brian's arm, whispering over and over that she wanted to go home. The man in the road didn't move, just stood there, hat shadowing his face, arm raised, finger pointing straight at us. Behind him, more figures filled the square. Men, women, children. Their clothes looked decades old, torn and rotted. Some barefoot, others with shoes falling apart at the seams. Not one of them said a word. Then the torches appeared. From every alley and tree line, flames wavered in the darkness, carried by more shapes. The circle around us tightened. Nate slammed the car into reverse, tires squealing as we spun around, desperate to get out the way we'd come. But where the road had been, where the forest had closed in minutes before, there was nothing now but a wall of darkness. Headlights stabbed into it, swallowed whole. It wasn't trees this time. It wasn't anything. Just black. Like driving into a void. Nate slammed the brakes before we went in. We sat there trembling, surrounded, every exit cut off. That's when the man in the hat finally spoke. "You came too far." His voice rasped, dry and brittle, like leaves ground underfoot. He lowered his hand and began walking toward us. The crowd followed, their faces expressionless, their eyes dull and glassy. Rachel screamed. Nate floored the gas, jerking the car forward, forcing the man to leap aside. We shot past him, straight through the square, down a narrow side street lined with collapsing houses. The crowd erupted. Screams filled the night, high-pitched, inhuman wails that scraped against my skull. Figures surged after us, torches bouncing, shadows slamming against the houses. The road twisted, buckled, dipped without warning. Nate fought the wheel, knuckles slick with sweat. "Where the hell are we?" he yelled, voice cracking. No one answered. We blew past a church with boarded windows, a rusted playground overgrown with weeds, a row of houses with doors hanging open. And everywhere, faces in the dark, watching, following. The car jolted as something hit the roof hard. Rachel screamed again. I craned my neck and saw a hand, pale skeletal fingers clawing at the metal. Then another, and another. They were climbing onto the car. Nate swerved, trying to shake them off, but they clung like insects, their faces pressed against the glass. One woman's eyes were gone, empty sockets leaking black fluid. She slammed her forehead against the passenger window again and again, spiderwebbing the glass. Brian roared, grabbed an empty soda bottle from the floor, and smashed it against her hand. She shrieked, recoiling, but more clambered up. Their weight dragged at the car, slowed it, until the engine whined in protest. Then, silence. The figures stopped pounding, stopped shrieking. They just stared through the windows, and in unison they whispered, "Stay." The sound of it rattled inside my chest. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Dozens of voices whispering in perfect rhythm. "Stay, stay, stay." Nate screamed and jerked the wheel. The car clipped a mailbox, swerved into a yard, plowed through a rotted fence. The figures toppled off, shrieking again, their whispers rising into a deafening chorus. We burst back onto the main road, heartbeats thundering. But the square was ahead again, the general store, the diner, the man in the hat. We'd looped. We didn't stop. Nate tore through the square, narrowly missing the man, the torches scattering aside. We barreled down another road faster this time, desperate to break the loop. Houses blurred by, then trees, then more cabins. When the road bent sharply, headlights swept across something that froze me cold. A school bus. Old, rusted, windows shattered. Half hidden in the trees, its yellow paint flaking away. The words, Ashwood Pines School District, barely legible on the side. Dozens of small handprints smeared the glass. I shouted for Nate to keep driving. He did, but the image seared into my mind. We drove until the gas gauge sank to empty. The car sputtered, coughed, and finally died in the middle of a dirt intersection lined with more cabins. We sat in silence, too terrified to move. Then the torches appeared again. Dozens this time, maybe hundreds, circling us. Faces blank, eyes dull, steps silent. The man in the hat stepped forward once more. "You've arrived," he rasped. Brian lost it. He threw open the back door and bolted into the woods. Rachel screamed after him, but within seconds his cries cut off. Just silence, then a wet sound. Like meat tearing. Something splattered against the windshield. Dark, thick. Rachel gagged. I stared in horror. Blood. We didn't see Brian again. The man in the hat reached the car, placed his palm flat on the hood, and leaned close. His eyes weren't glassy like the others. They burned faintly, ember red, like coals buried in ash. "This town feeds," he whispered. "It never stops." Rachel sobbed uncontrollably. Nate trembled behind the wheel, whispering prayers under his breath. I couldn't move. My body felt locked in ice. The crowd closed in. Hands slammed against the glass, fingers curled through cracks in the frame, faces pressed against the windows, eyeless, mouths stretched too wide. The car rocked under their weight. Then the doors clicked, unlocked. One by one, they opened. I screamed, kicked, fought as cold hands seized my arms. Rachel shrieked as they pulled her out of the other side. Nate slammed his fists against the wheel, yelling, cursing, until they dragged him too. The last thing I saw before they covered my face was the man in the hat leaning down, whispering through the window. "Now you're part of it." I woke at dawn on the side of the highway, clothes torn, body covered in bruises. Rachel and Nate lay beside me, unconscious, but breathing. Brian was gone. Our car was gone too. We staggered down the road until a trucker pulled over and took us to a police station. We told them everything about the cabins, the torches, the man in the hat. They didn't believe us. The officer said Ashwood Pines had been evacuated in the 1960s after a logging disaster killed half the town. The rest left. No one had lived there since. When I pressed, asked about the road, the cabins, the people, we got nothing but blank stares. But here's the thing. Sometimes, when I drive at night, my GPS still glitches. It'll flash a single word across the screen before correcting itself. Ashwood. And every time, I swear I hear voices whispering in the static, telling me to come back. There are nights that never leave you. Nights that burn themselves into the back of your mind, no matter how much you try to move on. For me, that night happened in the middle of the Nevada desert, on a highway, so empty it felt like I was the only living soul left in the world. I've driven that stretch of road a dozen times since, but never alone. Not anymore. Because once, I made the mistake of letting someone into my car, and by the time the sun came up, I couldn't tell if he was ever really human at all. It started in August of 2017. I had just quit my job in Denver after a fight with my manager that boiled over into something ugly. My sister lived in Henderson, outside of Las Vegas, and she'd offered me her couch until I got my feet under me. I packed up everything that fit into my beat-up Honda Civic and set out west, telling myself I'd be in Nevada by dawn if I just pushed through the night. That plan worked for the first 10 hours, but after midnight, once I was through Utah and cutting south on Highway 93, the road seemed to stretch forever. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel, my eyes burned from staring into the dark, and the silence pressed heavier with every mile. There's a certain kind of loneliness that only exists on desert highways at night. The headlights carve out a tunnel, but beyond that, it's just blackness swallowing everything. No houses, no towns, no glow of distant cities, just endless void. I was running on fumes, both the car and myself, when I first saw him. He was standing on the shoulder of the highway, thumb out, arm rigid like it had been there for hours. My high beams swept over him, tall, thin, maybe mid-30s. Dusty jeans, heavy jacket zipped to the chin, too heavy for August. His boots looked caked in mud, though it hadn't rained in weeks. His face was pale in the light, eyes dark and hollow. I don't know why I slowed down. Maybe it was exhaustion dulling my judgment. Maybe it was the way he didn't move, didn't wave, or step forward like normal hitchhikers do. He just stood there, calm, patient, as though he'd been waiting specifically for me. My hazard lights clicked as I pulled onto the gravel shoulder. The passenger door creaked open. He slid inside without a word, the seat springs groaning under his weight. That's when I smelled it. Damp earth, wet soil, rich and heavy, like the smell after rain. Only there hadn't been rain anywhere in 2 states. "Appreciate the ride," he said finally, his voice low and steady, like each word cost him effort. I nodded stiffly, forced my foot back on the gas, and pulled onto the road again. My headlights swept the shoulder in the rear view as we left it behind. I glanced at the mirror and my chest tightened. There was no shadow where he sat. For the first 20 miles, we didn't talk. The Civic rattled against the asphalt, engine humming steady, but the silence in the car was suffocating. Every so often, I sneaked a glance at him. His jacket was frayed at the seams, like it had been worn for decades. His boots looked even muddier up close, like he'd been walking through swamps, though the desert stretched endless in every direction. His face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp, lips cracked. The longer I looked, the more something about him seemed wrong. Not dramatic, not enough to scream danger, but just wrong. Like shadows bent oddly around his profile, like his breathing wasn't synced with the rise and fall of his chest. Finally, just to break the tension, I asked, "You headed west?" His head turned slowly, like the movement was deliberate, practiced, and then he smiled. "Yes," he said softly. That was it. Just yes. I forced a weak laugh. "Any place in particular?" "Not anymore." The words hung heavy in the air. Not anymore. I gripped the wheel tighter, eyes back on the endless stretch of highway. Minutes dragged on. The desert pressed tighter. The Civic's vents blew stale air, but somehow the cabin felt heavy, like the oxygen had thinned. I fiddled with the radio, desperate for some noise. Static. I twisted the dial, more static, but buried under it. Voices. Faint, fractured, whispering so low I couldn't make out the words. I leaned closer, straining to hear. That's when his voice cut through the silence. "You hear them too?" I snapped my hand back from the dial. The radio clicked off, but the static still echoed in my head, faint whispers curling into my ears even in silence. I didn't answer him. Couldn't. But when I glanced sideways, he was smiling wider, like he'd been waiting for my reaction. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. I told myself I'd been awake too long, that exhaustion was playing tricks. But then, in the mirror, I saw it again. His seat was empty. I blinked hard, leaned closer to the glass. The reflection showed nothing but worn leather. But when I jerked my eyes to the right, he was still there, sitting calm, still, hands folded in his lap. "You look tired," he said. His tone wasn't mocking. If anything, he was concerned. But his smile never touched his eyes. I nodded stiffly. "Yeah, long drive." "I know." He didn't ask. He didn't explain. He just said it, like he already knew. When the rest stop finally appeared, I nearly cried with relief. Just a cracked concrete pad, a row of vending machines under a buzzing light pole, and a single trash can overflowing with fast food wrappers. But it felt like safety. I pulled in, cut the ignition, and sat there with my hands trembling on the wheel. "I'm just going to stretch my legs," I muttered. He didn't respond, didn't move. I opened the door and stepped out. The night air was cold, sharp, cutting against my face. I paced under the buzzing light, sucking in breaths like I hadn't taken a full one in miles. When I finally turned back to the Civic, my stomach dropped. The passenger seat was empty. No jacket. No boots. No trace. The door was shut. Relief surged through me. Maybe he'd slipped out without me noticing. Maybe he was just some drifter, and my overtired brain had filled in the rest. I climbed back into the driver's seat, heart still pounding, and jammed the keys into the ignition. That's when the smell hit me. Damp earth. Stronger now, rich and wet like a fresh-dug grave. I froze, eyes flicking to the mirror. Empty seat. I turned slowly to the right. He was there, smiling. "You can't leave me here," he said softly. I wanted to scream, wanted to run, but his voice held me like a hand on the back of my neck. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry. It was calm, pleading even, and somehow that made it worse. My throat dry, I twisted the keys. The Civic roared to life, headlights stabbing back into the desert. The vending machines and buzzing lights shrank in the mirror until the night swallowed them whole. For the next 30 miles, he talked, not about himself, about me. He told me things he shouldn't know, about my apartment in Denver, the color of the walls, the dent in the doorframe where I'd tripped moving a couch, about the fight I'd had with my boss, word for word, though no one else had been there, about my sister in Henderson, her address, the scar across her hand from when we were kids. Every detail was perfect. "How do you know that?" I whispered. He leaned closer, smile stretching too wide, teeth catching in the dim glow of the dash. "Because," he said softly, "I've ridden with you before." The moment he said those words, "I've ridden with you before," I felt something inside me twist, like the air had been knocked out of me. My grip tightened on the wheel until my knuckles went white. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, and yet for the first time, I felt like I wasn't moving at all. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice breaking. He didn't answer. He leaned back in the seat, smile frozen, eyes locked on the road ahead. The Civic hummed steady, tires buzzing against the asphalt. I wanted to press, wanted to scream at him to explain, but something in me was terrified of hearing the answer. So I kept driving. The clock on the dash clicked from 3:01 to 3:02. I remember staring at it, desperate for normalcy, for something to remind me I was still in control. But when I looked again 5 minutes later, it was still 3:02. I tapped the glass, shook my head, glanced at my phone on the console. No signal, no time. Just a black screen reflecting my own face. Except in the reflection, the passenger's head was turned toward me, grinning. I whipped my head around. He was still staring forward. My stomach dropped. Another hour, or maybe it was just minutes, passed in silence. The desert pressed tighter, stars dimming above us like someone was turning them off one by one. My eyes burned. My body screamed for sleep, but fear held me upright. Finally, I snapped. "You need to get out, now." I slammed the brakes. The Civic screeched to a stop in the middle of the highway, dust pluming in the headlights. My chest heaved as I yanked the gear into park. "Out," I demanded. "I don't care where you go. You're not staying in this car." Slowly, he turned toward me. The smile never left his face. "You invited me in." His voice was calm, steady. Not a plea, not a threat, just fact. I shoved the door open, stormed around, and yanked at the passenger handle. It wouldn't budge. Locked. I pulled again, harder, until the veins in my arms screamed. The lock popped up, but when I pulled, the door didn't move. It was sealed like welded shut. I stumbled back, chest pounding. The glass shimmered under the beams of the headlights. And then, slowly, he leaned forward, pressing his palm flat against the window. His skin was gray, damp, like clay, pulled from the earth. "You can't leave me here," he repeated. I bolted back into the driver's seat, slammed the Civic into drive, and floored it. The tires screeched, gravel spitting into the dark. The desert blurred by. But when I dared a glance at the mirror, his seat was empty again. I turned to the right. He was sitting calmly, hands folded, smile fixed. I don't know how long I drove. Minutes. Hours. Time lost meaning. The mile markers stopped appearing. The road stretched into black infinity. Then, out of nowhere, headlights appeared ahead. Relief surged through me so hard I nearly cried. A pair of truck lights, distant but steady, growing closer. A sign of life. A sign I wasn't alone. I flashed my brights. I leaned on the horn. Anything to get their attention. As the truck drew closer, I saw the driver's face illuminated in his own cab. He looked straight at me, eyes wide, and then his gaze flicked to my passenger seat. The truck swerved, air horn blaring, tires screaming. It missed me by inches and roared past into the night. My hands trembled on the wheel. My eyes flicked to the passenger. He was still smiling. "They see me," he whispered. The fuel gauge dipped below empty. My heart sank. I'd forgotten all about gas, running on fear alone. The Civic sputtered, coughed, and finally rolled to a stop on the shoulder. Silence swallowed the desert. I sat there, breath ragged, eyes locked forward. My mind screamed at me to run, to get out and take my chances on foot, but my body refused to move. Beside me, he shifted at last. Slowly, deliberately, he turned in his seat to face me fully. His smile widened, stretching too far, tearing at the corners of his mouth. His eyes glowed faintly, pale like moonlight on water. "You're tired," he said softly. "Let me drive." My chest seized. "No." His hand shot out faster than I could blink, seizing the wheel. His skin was ice-cold, clammy, pressing hard enough to leave marks. The Civic's engine roared back to life, though the keys weren't even in the ignition. The headlights flared. The car lurched forward, accelerating on its own. I screamed, fumbling for the door handle. It was locked, jammed. The windows fogged instantly, condensation dripping down like rain, though the desert outside was bone dry. He laughed then, low, rattling, not human. "You invited me," he whispered again, "and I don't leave." The next thing I remember is waking up to sunlight. The Civic was parked on the side of the highway, engine idling, fuel gauge inexplicably full. My head lay against the steering wheel, a bruise throbbing across my temple. The passenger seat was empty. No jacket, no boots, no damp earth smell, just me. I stumbled out into the morning heat, blinking against the sun. For a moment, I convinced myself it had all been a nightmare. Sleep-deprived hallucination. Too much caffeine, too many miles. But when I circled the car, my blood froze. On the trunk, pressed into the dust, was a single handprint. Long fingers, too long. Deep grooves like claws etched into the paint. I never picked up another hitchhiker after that. But sometimes, when I drive late at night, my radio crackles. Not static, not music. A voice, calm, steady. "You can't leave me here." There are places you pass on the road that seem harmless in the daylight. Gas stations, old diners, small-town motels, just the background scenery of America's highways. But at 2 a.m, when the world is quiet and your brain starts to blur the line between exhaustion and reality, those same places can feel wrong. Like they're waiting for someone desperate enough to stop. I learned that the hard way in the fall of 2015 when I found the motel at mile 18. I was driving from Minneapolis to St. Louis for work. The plan was simple: leave after lunch, make the 8-hour drive, and check into a Holiday Inn downtown before midnight. But traffic had other ideas. A pileup outside Des Moines cost me 2 hours. A wrong turn outside Ottawa added another 40 minutes. By the time I hit southern Iowa, my GPS decided to reroute me off the interstate altogether, sending me through farm country that looked like it hadn't changed since the 70s. I told myself it was fine. I'd make up time on the back roads, but midnight turned into 1 a.m., and 1 a.m. turned into 2. I'd been on the road almost 12 hours. My back screamed from sitting too long. My eyes burned every time headlights from an oncoming truck flared past. I was running on fumes, both me and the car, and the exits had vanished. No rest areas, no late-night gas stations, no chain motels glowing comfortingly by the roadside. Just black fields stretching forever, broken only by the occasional windmill creaking in the dark. That's when I saw the sign. It wasn't a billboard. It wasn't even new. It was a rusted pole with a glowing red vacancy sign flickering beneath the word motel. No chain name, no logo, just motel in block letters. Relief washed through me. My body ached for a bed. I didn't care if it was dingy, didn't care if it was overpriced. I just needed to get off the road before I wrapped myself around a telephone pole. I slowed, turned onto the cracked asphalt driveway, and pulled into the lot. The motel looked like it had been built in the 50s and never touched since. A single row of rooms stretched along a sagging roofline, their numbers faded, their curtains drawn tight. The paint was peeling, the neon buzzed like a dying insect, and the lot was nearly empty. 2 cars sat crooked under the buzzing lights, both so old and rusted I wondered if they'd even run. The office glowed a faint yellow through grimy glass. A bell above the door jingled weakly as I stepped inside. The air hit me first, thick, stale, a sour undertone of bleach, like someone had tried to scrub something away but hadn't quite succeeded. The lobby was bare, a cracked linoleum floor, a single plastic chair in the corner, a TV bolted high on the wall playing static with no sound. Behind the desk sat a man, thin, pale. His hair was slicked back too perfectly, like it had been painted into place. He wore a buttoned shirt and tie that looked 2 sizes too big. His eyes were wide, watery, and unblinking. He smiled as I entered. His lips stretched too far before snapping back. "Welcome," he said. His voice was flat, no accent, no warmth, just the sound of a word spoken because it had to be. Yeah, just a room for the night," I muttered, setting my overnight bag down. "Of course," he said. He slid a brass key across the counter. Not a card. A key. A heavy fob dangled from it, stamped with the number 6. "That'll be $30. I dug out my wallet, peeled off 2 20s. His fingers brushed mine when he took the bills. Cold. Damp. He didn't count them, just slid them into a drawer without looking. "Breakfast at 6, he said. I blinked. There wasn't a vending machine in sight, let alone a kitchen. But his wide eyes never left mine, so I just nodded, pocketed the key, and hurried out. Room 6 was halfway down the row. The door stuck when I tried the lock, groaning like it hadn't been opened in years. The carpet inside was a faded orange, stiff with age, and the air smelled of mildew and something sweeter underneath, like rotting fruit. The furniture looked frozen in time. A square TV on a rolling cart. A nightstand with a cigarette burn carved deep into the wood. A stiff bedspread patterned in hideous brown and orange stripes. But I didn't care. I was too tired. I tossed my bag on the chair, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the mattress. The silence hit me instantly. No hum of a fridge, no AC rumble, no muffled highway noise, just silence so heavy it pressed on my ears. I rolled onto my side, staring at the curtains. A faint glow leaked around the edges. Not headlights, not a street lamp. It pulsed, slow, steady. I told myself I was imagining it, closed my eyes. Sleep dragged me down fast. I dreamed I was standing in the hallway outside my room. The carpet stretched longer than it should have, the walls closing in tight. Every door was shut except one, room 6, wide open. Inside, the TV blared static, though I hadn't turned it on. The bedspread writhed like something alive was underneath it. The bathroom door was ajar. A shadow leaned against it, too tall for the frame. When it shifted, I saw its face, white, blank, 2 dark holes where eyes should have been. I woke with a jolt, heart hammering, sweat pouring down my face. The room was silent. TV dark. Bathroom door closed. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, tried to slow my breathing. Just a dream. Exhaustion playing tricks. Then I saw it. The chair in the corner. When I'd come in, I'd tossed my bag on it. Now, my bag was on the floor. The chair was empty, but it wasn't empty. The cushion sagged, pressed down by the weight of something unseen. I froze, breath locked in my throat. Then it rose, slowly. The cushion lifting as if whatever had been sitting there had just stood up. I wanted to scream, wanted to run, but I was paralyzed. And in that thick silence, I heard it. Breathing, not mine. From the corner of the room. The breathing in the corner grew louder, slow, ragged, like someone who hadn't drawn air in years was relearning how. I clutched the bedspread to my chest, eyes straining in the dark. The lamp beside the bed was just an arm's length away, but I was terrified of what the light would show. Finally, with a trembling hand, I reached out and flicked the switch. The bulb flared, and the corner was empty. The chair stood where it had before, my bag back on top of it as if it had never moved. The carpet lay flat, the air still, but the bedspread was damp beneath my fingers, as though someone else's sweaty hands had just gripped it. I sat frozen until my pulse slowed, until logic clawed its way back through the fog. I was hallucinating. That had to be it. Exhaustion, stress, maybe even carbon monoxide seeping in from some old heater. It was the only explanation. I stood, legs trembling, and crossed to the bathroom. The light flickered weakly as I flipped the switch. A cracked mirror hung above the sink. The glass warped so badly it twisted my reflection. But behind my own reflection, for half a second, I swore I saw another face. Blank, pale, watching me. The light buzzed and steadied, and it was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Instead, I sat upright against the headboard, every light on, staring at the door. The silence pressed heavier with each hour. At one point, I heard a soft knock on the wall behind me, like someone rapping gently from the next room. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. I wanted to believe it was plumbing, some old pipe shifting. But it repeated. Steady. Purposeful. By the time the gray hint of dawn leaked through the curtains, my nerves were shot raw. I stumbled out of bed, shoved everything into my bag, and forced myself out into the morning air. The parking lot was still. The same 2 rusted cars sat in the same crooked spots. My Civic looked out of place among them, too new, too alive. I hurried into the office, eager to check out and leave this place behind. The man at the desk sat exactly as before. Same slicked hair, same wide eyes. He didn't blink as I approached. Room 6, I said, tossing the key on the counter. My voice cracked. I'm leaving. He tilted his head slightly. You just arrived, he said. I froze. No, I stayed the night. I'm checking out. His smile widened, stretching too far. Breakfast at 6, he said softly. I turned and bolted. When I yanked open the office door, the lot outside was gone. Instead, a hallway stretched before me. Dim, endless, lined with doors on either side. The same hideous orange carpet, the same faded numbers. Behind me, the office had vanished. Just more hallway. My chest seized. I stumbled forward, trying door after door. Each was locked. My footsteps echoed down the endless corridor. Finally, one door creaked open. Room 6. Inside, the bedspread writhed. The TV blared static. I slammed it shut and ran. The hallway bent, twisted, doubled back on itself. I passed the same faded ice machine 3 times. The same vending machine filled with dust and nothing else. Somewhere ahead, I heard voices. Whispering. Dozens of them, overlapping, impossible to understand. I forced myself toward them. The whispers grew louder, clearer. They were saying my name. I turned a corner and froze. The hallway was filled with people. At least a dozen, maybe more. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their clothes decades out of date. Plaid jackets, polyester dresses, shoes scuffed to nothing. Their faces were pale, blank, their eyes hollow sockets. In unison, they turned their heads toward me. Stay, they whispered. The sound wasn't air. It was inside my skull. I stumbled back, heart hammering. My hand hit a doorknob. I twisted and fell inside. The room was identical to mine. Same bed, same carpet, same chair in the corner. But the chair wasn't empty. A man sat in it. His hair slicked back. His tie too big. His watery eyes fixed on me. You invited us in, he said calmly. I screamed, lunged for the door, but the hallway was gone. Only another room, another bed, another chair, another figure sitting in it, waiting. I ran through one door, then another, and another, each open to the same thing, same room, same chair, same figure, until finally, I stumbled into a room where the TV was on, and it was playing me. The screen showed the moment I'd pulled into the lot, headlights sweeping over the peeling paint. It showed me walking into the office, handing over money, fumbling with the brass key. Then it showed me sleeping, tossing, waking in terror. And now it showed me standing in front of the TV, watching myself watch myself. My legs gave out. I fell to my knees, sobbing. Behind me, the door creaked open. I didn't turn. I couldn't. I saw it in the reflection instead. Dozens of figures poured into the room. Pale, hollow, their mouths opening too wide as they whispered in unison. "Stay." The screen flickered. My reflection smiled back at me. And then the light cut out. The next morning, state troopers found my car abandoned on the shoulder of Highway 18. The keys were still in the ignition. My bag was in the passenger seat, but there was no sign of me. When my family called the police, they described the motel I'd told them about in a voicemail. The squat building, the neon vacancy sign, room 6. The officers searched mile 18 for days. There was no motel. There had never been a motel. Long-haul driving does something strange to your brain. After a certain number of hours, the road stops feeling like asphalt and paint. It becomes a kind of tunnel, dark on the edges, endless up ahead, lined by the steady white flash of the lane dividers. Your eyelids get heavy, your thoughts blur, and the radio voices start blending with your own. That's where I was the night I found the diner. It was late October, a run-of-the-mill lumber haul from Omaha to Tulsa, and I'd already been on the road close to 11 hours. Normally, I'd stop around 9. Get a shower, eat something decent, call it a night. But dispatch had been riding me hard for delays, and I thought I could squeeze another hour in before I parked. My body didn't agree. By the time the clock glowed past 2 a.m., I was chewing gum so hard my jaw hurt, washing it down with bitter gas station coffee that tasted like ash. My hands had that faint tremble I always get when I've been awake too long. The hum of my tires on the asphalt had become hypnotic. I told myself I'd pull off at the next exit. Whatever came first, a Love's, a rest stop, even a 24-hour diner. Anything. That's when the sign appeared. A flickering neon glow on the shoulder of the highway. Diner open 24 hours. It rose out of the darkness like a beacon. The letters buzzed faint red, some half-burned, but alive enough to grab me. A cracked arrow pointed toward a gravel driveway that dipped away from the main road. I slowed, blinked hard, and saw cars in the lot. Not just one or two, but half a dozen. An old Buick, a dented Ford pickup, a family sedan with a roof rack. My chest loosened with relief. Civilization. Hot food. People. I swung the rig off the exit, tires crunching gravel as I eased into the lot. The diner itself looked straight out of the 1950s. A silver box with chrome trim, windows fogged with warmth. Booths lined the glass, silhouettes of people bent over meals. A jukebox glowed by the door, neon tubes running in lazy circles. Through the glass, I saw life. A waitress in a pink uniform refilling mugs. A man cutting into a steak. A little boy licking at an ice cream cone that dripped onto his wrist. Normal. Comforting. I killed the engine, grabbed my wallet, and stepped into the night air. The gravel crunched under my boots as I crossed to the door, and the second I pushed it open, something hit me. The air inside was wrong. It smelled of bacon grease, sure, but old grease, stale, clinging, sour. The warmth felt too thick, like a blanket pressing on my skin. The jukebox didn't play music. It hummed a single, low note. Not static, not song, just a sound that vibrated in my teeth. And the people I'd seen through the glass, they were still there, still in the exact same positions. The man with the steak had his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. The boy's ice cream dripped steadily down his wrist, cone untouched. A woman in pearls stirred her coffee, spoon hovering without moving. None of them blinked. None of them breathed. For a second, I told myself I'd walked into one of those weird freeze mob performance things like you see online. But no one laughed. No one moved. The only sound was that humming jukebox. Then the waitress turned. Her steps were stiff, mechanical, shoes clicking too sharply against the linoleum. She had the same pink uniform I'd noticed through the glass, the same pinned-up hair, the same paper hat tilted just so. Her skin was pale, waxy under the fluorescent light. "Coffee?" she asked. Her voice was flat. Not unkind, not aggressive, just flat. I hesitated. My mouth opened, closed. Finally, I forced a smile. "Yeah, coffee sounds good." Her lips stretched too wide. She turned with a sharp pivot and walked back toward the kitchen, movements jerky, wrong, like someone imitating a walk without ever having done it before. The customer stayed frozen. I slid into a booth near the door, my heartbeat loud in my ears. The vinyl seat groaned under me, stale mildew rising from the cracks. I tried not to look at the man across from me, but my eyes kept flicking over. His burger hovered mid-air, patty gray and bun soggy. His eyes, wide and glassy, were pointed straight at me. I looked down at the table, scratched laminate. A menu so faded I could barely read the items. Meatloaf, patty melt, pie, all a couple bucks, like the world outside had never changed. The jukebox droned. The waitress returned. She slid a mug onto the table. Steam curled up from the cup, but the liquid inside wasn't coffee. It was too dark. Black, but not the brown black of coffee. More like oil, thick, glossy. "On the house," she said. Her hand lingered on the mug a moment too long before pulling away. "Thanks," I muttered, though the word caught in my throat. The smell rising from the cup was metallic. Wrong. I didn't drink. Couldn't. I kept my eyes on the mug, too afraid to look up. But movement in the corner of my vision drew me. The boy with the ice cream cone. His hand was empty now. The cone was gone. His mouth hung open, tongue thick with melted ice cream. He was still staring forward, but his face had shifted. Slightly. Just slightly. I hadn't seen him move. My chest tightened. I stood quickly, wallet still in hand, and made for the door. The handle was cold. Too cold. Metal biting into my skin. I shoved it open and stepped back into the diner. The same booths, the same frozen customers, the same humming jukebox. The waitress was right in front of me now, too close, smile stretched impossibly wide. "Coffee?" she asked. My breath caught. I shoved the door again, harder this time, and again I stepped into the diner. Same booth, same man with the burger, same boy with the ice cream stain down his arm. "Coffee?" the waitress asked, voice flat, unchanged. Panic surged. I ran for the door, threw it open, and barreled through. I stumbled, looked around, and was back inside. The jukebox hummed. The frozen people sat in silence, on the fourth try. When I dared glance back at the booths, the man with the burger had lowered it. His mouth hung open, too wide, jaw unhinged past what was human. His glassy eyes were locked on me. I froze. My body wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The hum deepened, vibrating the windows, rattling the silverware on the tables. And one by one, the customers began to turn their heads. Every head in the diner turned toward me at once. It wasn't fast, not a snap or a jolt. It was worse than that, slow, deliberate, like clock hands ticking in perfect unison. Their eyes were wide and glassy, mouths slack, faces pale as wax. The hum of the jukebox deepened until it rattled the plates, until the lights above buzzed and flickered. I stumbled back from the door, heart hammering. My hand scrabbled for my phone. The screen lit up, but there was no signal. No clock, no numbers. Just a black screen reflecting my own face. And behind my reflection, I saw them. Dozens of glassy eyes fixed on me. Then the waitress moved. She stepped forward, shoes clacking on the linoleum, hands folded in front of her. Her smile stretched impossibly wide. "Sit," she said. It wasn't a suggestion. I shook my head. Words tangled in my throat. "No, I'm leaving." I lunged for the door again, yanked it open, and nearly screamed. It wasn't the parking lot. It wasn't the night sky. It was the same diner, the same booths, the same frozen faces waiting inside. I slammed the door shut, pressed my back against it. My chest heaved. I turned in circles, searching for another exit, a window, anything. But the windows showed nothing. Not the highway, not my truck, just black. Pure, endless black pressing against the glass. The boy with the ice cream stain on his arm slid out of his booth. His movements were jerky, like a puppet with tangled strings. He placed both sticky hands on the table and leaned forward, head cocking to the side. The man with the burger dropped it with a wet splat. His jaw hung loose, unhinging farther than it should, and the woman with the pearls stirred her coffee once, slowly, even though the spoon had long since slipped from her fingers. I backed toward my booth, heart thrashing. "What do you want?" I demanded. My voice cracked, weak. None of them answered. They all just stood, one by one, scraping against the vinyl, sliding out of their booths. Their shoes dragged across the linoleum as they stepped into the aisle, bodies jerking forward in perfect rhythm. The waitress was still smiling. "Sit," she repeated softer this time, almost coaxing. I bolted. I ran down the aisle between booths, past the frozen stairs, past the sticky tables, past the humming jukebox. My boots slammed the floor, echoing louder than the hum, louder than my own ragged breath. I shoved open the kitchen door, praying for a back exit. But the kitchen wasn't a kitchen. It was another diner. The same booths, the same people, the same waitress waiting at the counter. I stumbled back, nearly fell. My hand hit the fryer basket. It was cold, bone cold. The air was thick, stinking of old grease, but no grill sizzled, no stove clanged, just silence. The waitress in this diner tilted her head. "Coffee?" she asked. Her lips didn't move with the word. The sound came from everywhere at once, bouncing off tile and chrome. I turned, shoved through another door. Another diner. Same booths, same people, same humming. Again and again. Each door led to the same place. Another copy of the diner. Another tableau of frozen figures waiting to come alive. By the fifth door, I collapsed against a counter, chest burning. My vision blurred, sweat dripping into my eyes. I was trapped. Every door led me back inside. Every window looked into blackness. My rig, the highway, the world outside. It was gone. The hum deepened, vibrating through the floor, up into my bones. The people around me began to move again. Not quickly. Not at once. But enough. The boy tilted his head, neck cracking audibly. The man with the burger crawled onto his table, limbs bending wrong, hands scrabbling for purchase. The woman with the pearls turned her head a full 90 degrees, glassy eyes fixing on me. And then, in perfect unison, every mouth in the diner opened. Not wide enough to scream. Not wide enough to speak. Just wide enough to drip. Thick black liquid spilled from their lips, pooling on the tables, seeping into the floor. It hissed as it spread, steaming where it touched the linoleum. The waitress stepped closer, holding out her hand. Her palm was wet with the same black liquid. "Drink," she said. I screamed and bolted again, slamming through another door, boots sliding on greasy tile. My shoulder crashed into a jukebox, rattling it off its bolts. The hum faltered. For half a second, silence rang in my ears. Then the jukebox lit up. Not with neon, with faces. Dozens of them pressed against the glass. Wide-eyed, mouths moving soundlessly, hands clawing at the inside. Their features blurred, melted, reformed. Some looked familiar. Too familiar. I saw myself. My own face, distorted, lips moving in frantic silence. I staggered back, stomach lurching. The face is pressed harder, glass bowing outward, liquid seeping from the seams. The customers began to close in, their footsteps dragged in perfect rhythm, echoing too loud. I spun, desperate, and dove into a booth, and froze, because someone was already sitting there. Me, same jacket, same hands, same tired eyes. He turned, smiling that too wide smile I'd seen on the waitress. His glassy eyes met mine. "You're late," he said. "I don't remember leaving the diner. I don't remember getting back to my truck. All I remember is the sun in my eyes when I woke, slumped over the wheel. The lot was empty. My rig was the only vehicle in sight. The diner was gone. In its place was a cracked foundation, weeds sprouting through broken concrete. The chrome, the booths, the neon sign, gone. But when I checked my logbook, I froze. The last entry was from 3 nights ago, and when I looked in the side mirror, my reflection smiled back at me. Too wide. There's a certain kind of silence you only find on the road at 2 a.m. Not the quiet of a library, not the peace of a forest, but the suffocating absence of anything human. The kind where the only sound is your tires humming against blacktop and the occasional rattle of your own breath inside the cab. That's the kind of silence I'd been driving through for hours the night I pulled into the rest stop. It was late March of 2017, and I was 21, dumb enough to think a midnight road trip across 3 states was romantic. My girlfriend had transferred to a new college, and I wanted to surprise her before midterms. I didn't tell her I was coming. I just loaded my beat-up Toyota with a backpack, a thermos of coffee, and a stack of burned CDs I hadn't touched since high school. The first few hours had been easy. Music blasting, caffeine kicking, the thrill of doing something reckless carrying me along. But by the time the dashboard clock glowed past 1:45 a.m., the high was gone. The playlist looped back to songs I'd already skipped twice. The thermos was empty. My eyelids dragged like weights. I rolled the windows down. I slapped my cheeks. Nothing helped. The road stretched on forever. A tunnel of reflectors and yellow lines. Towns blurred past without names. Gas stations closed hours ago. It felt like I was the only person left alive in the world. So when I saw the blue highway sign, rest area 2 miles, I almost cried. The exit ramp curved through a patch of pines, and suddenly there it was. A squat concrete building with a slanted roof, lit by buzzing sodium lamps. A vending machine glowed weakly outside. A semi sat at the far end of the lot, cab dark, driver asleep. I killed the engine, grabbed my backpack, and climbed out. Gravel crunched under my sneakers. The air was damp, sharp with the smell of wet asphalt. My bladder ached, my head throbbed, so I trudged toward the restroom door. It was metal, scarred with graffiti and stickers, the kind of door you'd expect at a state-funded stop. I pulled it open. Hinges groaned, echoing too loud in the tiled hallway. Inside was ordinary, almost boring. Gray tile floors, a row of sinks along one wall, stalls across from them, mirrors above the sinks. The smell of bleach clung faintly in the air. I actually felt relieved. Just a normal bathroom. But it didn't stay normal for long. The first odd thing was the sound, or the lack of it. No highway hum outside, no ventilation buzz, no faint drip from leaky pipes, just silence thick enough to make my own breathing sound like shouting. I turned on a faucet. Water gushed out, cold and metallic. I splashed my face, hoping it would shock me awake. Droplets dripped down, and when I glanced at the mirror, my stomach tightened. It was me. Same messy hair, same bloodshot eyes. But it was half a second behind. When I blinked, the reflection blinked late. When I lifted my hand, it followed just a fraction too slow, like a video buffering. I froze. Then I laughed nervously, out loud. "You're just tired," I muttered. "Brain's lagging." I turned away, grabbing paper towels, but in the corner of my eye, I swore the reflection didn't turn with me. It kept staring. I spun back fast. My reflection was normal again, perfectly in sync. Still, unease crawled up my spine. I shoved into a stall, did my business, tried to shake it off. When I came back out, I avoided looking up, but I couldn't resist. My eyes flicked toward the mirror, and my blood ran cold. I wasn't smiling. My lips were pressed in a tight line, but the reflection was grinning, wide, ear to ear, teeth bared, eyes gleaming in a way mine didn't. I staggered back so fast my shoulder hit the paper towel dispenser. Metal clattered loud against tile. I squeezed my eyes shut, opened them again. The reflection was back to normal. Just me. I told myself I'd imagined it. That exhaustion was warping my vision, but my chest thudded with a panic I couldn't reason away. A stall door slammed behind me. I jumped, spinning toward the sound. All the stalls were shut tight. Silence pressed in. Then another slammed, and another. One by one, doors banged shut, echoing like gunshots until every stall was closed. My hand shook. I backed toward the sinks, eyes darting between the stalls and the mirror. The mirror me wasn't moving. I was breathing hard, chest rising and falling, but the reflection stood perfectly still, eyes locked on mine. Then, slowly, it tilted its head. I hadn't moved. I bolted. I ran for the door, shoved it open, and stumbled outside into the lot. But the lot wasn't the same. The semi was gone. The vending machine was dark, and my car wasn't there. The lamps buzzed, flickered, stretched the shadows long and thin. The lot seemed bigger now, too big, stretching endlessly into black. I spun, panic clawing at my throat. The restroom door creaked open behind me, and I saw my reflection step out. The thing stepping out of the restroom wasn't me, but it wore my face. Same jacket, same tired eyes, same backpack slung over one shoulder. But there was something wrong about it. The way it walked. Too smooth, like it had practiced walking but hadn't gotten it quite right. The smile stretched wider than a smile should. I froze in the middle of the lot, breath puffing in clouds, heart hammering. The not me tilted its head, and then it started walking toward me. I spun and ran. Gravel crunched under my sneakers as I bolted across the lot. The lamps flickered overhead, buzzing louder with every step, throwing shadows across the cracked pavement. I didn't care which direction I was going. I just needed distance. But the lot didn't end. I should have hit grass, trees, a ditch, anything. Instead, the concrete stretched on and on, row after row of lights buzzing above, identical cracks in the pavement repeating like a loop. I skidded to a stop, chest heaving. When I turned back, my reflection was closer. It hadn't run. It had just kept walking. Smooth, steady, closing the distance no matter how far I went. "Stay the hell away from me," I shouted, voice cracking. It didn't answer. It just smiled wider. I bolted for the building. The restroom door stood open, black inside. I shoved through it, praying for an exit out the other side. But it wasn't the restroom anymore. It was mirrors. Dozens of them, lining every wall, stacked floor to ceiling, each one reflecting me, but not quite me. Some were too slow, some smiled when I didn't. Some stood still while I panted and stumbled. And in one, just one, my reflection leaned close to the glass and whispered something I couldn't hear. I backed away, eyes darting between the reflections. My throat was dry, hands trembling. Then the lights flickered, and all the reflections leaned forward at once, hundreds of me pressing against the glass, mouths opening wide. But no sound came out, only silence, the kind of silence that felt heavier than any scream. A crack split the air. One mirror fractured, a jagged line spreading across the glass. My reflection inside pressed harder, blood smearing from its palms. Another crack, another fracture. The mirrors weren't holding them back. They were trying to get out. I ran, shoving through a doorway on the far side. Another bathroom. Same sinks, same stalls, same mirrors. I stumbled to the sinks, clutching the porcelain, chest burning. My reflection stared back, breathing evenly calm. I splashed water on my face, but the reflection didn't get wet. The sink gurgled, then coughed. Black liquid sputtered out, thick as tar, reeking of rot. I gagged, stumbled back. My reflection leaned forward, smiling. "You don't belong here," it said. Its lips moved. Mine didn't. I screamed and bolted for the stalls. I shoved one open. Empty. Another. Empty. The third. Someone was inside. It was me. But this version looked worse. Skin pale, lips cracked, eyes sunken like he'd been trapped there for years. His head lifted slowly, and when his eyes met mine, I felt my stomach drop. "Don't let it take you," he rasped. His voice was my own, but shredded, broken. "Don't let it." The stall door slammed shut. When I yanked it open again, it was empty. The hum grew louder. The lights buzzed and popped. I turned toward the mirrors and froze. Every reflection was gone. Every single one. The glass was black, empty, like windows into nothing. And then one by one, they lit up again. Not with me, with people I didn't know. A woman sobbing, pounding on the glass. A child screaming silently, face pressed against the surface. A man clawing at his own throat. Dozens of strangers, trapped in the mirrors, staring at me with wide, desperate eyes. And right in the middle, I saw her, my girlfriend. She was pounding on the glass, tears streaking her face, mouth forming my name over and over. I staggered forward, hand pressed to the mirror. "Hannah." Her eyes widened. She screamed something I couldn't hear, fists slamming against the glass. Then hands grabbed my shoulders. I spun. My reflection stood behind me, grinning. Its grip was ice cold, fingers digging into my flesh. It leaned close, breath damp against my ear. "You don't belong here anymore," it whispered. And with a shove, it hurled me forward, straight into the mirror. The glass didn't break. It rippled. Cold swallowed me whole. My lungs seized, my vision blurred. I clawed for the surface, but there was no surface, just endless black water pressing in from every side. I screamed, bubbles tearing from my throat, but no sound reached the outside. Through the glass, I saw my reflection standing where I'd been, fixing its jacket, slinging my backpack over its shoulder. It smiled one last time. Then it walked out of the bathroom, out of sight. And I realized the truth. I wasn't me anymore. I was just another reflection. Running out of gas in the desert at night is a kind of fear you can't laugh off. In the city, an empty tank is an inconvenience. You hike to the next block, find a late-night station, maybe call a rideshare. Out here, in the middle of Nevada nothingness, it's a coffin with wheels. It means sitting under a blanket of stars with no phone service, no houses for 50 miles, and nothing but the endless stretch of black highway to remind you how far you are from help. It means you wait and hope, praying another car will pass before the desert swallows you whole. That's the thought that kept clawing at the back of my mind as I watched the fuel gauge needle dip below, empty, and stick there, as though mocking me. "Relax," Mara said from the passenger seat. She said it casually, but her voice had that tremor she got when she was trying to convince herself more than me. Her thumbnail was already raw from chewing. She kept glancing from the dash to the horizon, where the road stretched in a straight black line into forever. "You'll find a station. There has to be one soon. People drive this road all the time." I nodded, like I believed her, keeping my eyes locked on the faded white lines glowing in the high beams. I didn't believe her. We hadn't seen another set of headlights in over an hour. No signs of towns, no roadside motels, not even a rusted mailbox to prove someone had lived out here. Just scrub brush and jagged silhouettes of mountains far in the distance. The longer we drove, the more the silence pressed in, broken only by the engine's low groan and the rattle of the dashboard. When the neon glow appeared on the horizon, I nearly slammed on the brakes out of sheer relief. A red flicker against the desert night, faint at first, then brighter as we drew close enough to make out the blocky shape of a building. The glow buzzed into words. Gas, open 24 hours. See, Mara said, exhaling as if she'd willed it into existence. Told you. You just get wound up too easy. Her attempt at a smile didn't reach her eyes. She was right about me being wound tight, though. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel as we pulled off the road, gravel crunching under the tires. The station sat squatting under a single buzzing floodlight, 2 pumps out front, a small brick building behind them, and the neon sign clinging to the roof as though it had been burning since the 1970s. The paint on the pumps was peeling, the numbers faded on the dials. They weren't even the modern kind with digital screens. These looked like antiques, older than either of us. One hose dangled loose, squeaking faintly as it swayed in the breeze. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment listening. The desert was so quiet it felt like cotton stuffed in my ears. No bugs, no animals, not even the hum of traffic from the highway we'd left behind. Just the crackle of the neon and the faint whine of the floodlight. Mara pulled her hoodie tighter. God, it's creepy. Better creepy than dead on the side of the road, I said, forcing a laugh that sounded too loud in the stillness. She didn't answer. I grabbed my wallet and stepped out. The desert air was sharp and cold, the kind of cold that cuts instead of comforts. Gravel shifted under my shoes as I approached the pump, swiping my card down the slot out of habit. Nothing. No beep, no error screen, no little green light to tell me to proceed. I tried again, then a third time. Dead. Mara leaned out the window. Maybe you have to pay inside first? I sighed, pocketed the card and glanced at the building. The windows were warped, cloudy with grime, but through them I thought I could see shelves stacked high with goods. Old boxes, faded colors, magazines sagging in racks. I couldn't tell if it was dust making everything gray, or if the products themselves had aged into relics. Stay here, I said. She didn't argue, just hugged her hoodie tighter as I made my way to the door. The bell above it gave a dull metallic chime when I pushed it open. The smell hit instantly. Dust, mildew, and something sweeter underneath, like fruit gone to rot. The air was thick, stale, as if no one had opened the place in decades. Inside looked like a snapshot of another decade. Shelves sagged under the weight of products I didn't recognize. Candy bars with logos I'd never seen, the fonts strange and blocky. Soda bottles shaped wrong, with faded labels for brands that had been gone for decades. A rack of magazines near the counter bore headlines about the Berlin Wall. Pages yellowed, curled with time. I ran my hand along a row of potato chip bags. The plastic crinkled dryly, brittle, like it would disintegrate if I squeezed. My chest tightened. Everything in here looked like it had been sitting since before I was born. At the counter stood a man, tall, thin, with slicked back hair as black as oil. His collared shirt was stained and yellowed at the cuffs. He stood unnervingly still until I met his eyes. Then slowly his lips stretched into a smile. Pump outside isn't working, I said, trying to sound casual, though my voice echoed too loudly in the quiet. Do I prepay here? He blinked once, twice. Then, rasping as though his throat was dry from disuse, he said, Of course. How much? Fill up, I said. He nodded once, jerky, like the motion wasn't natural to him. His hand slid across the counter and tugged the register drawer open. I leaned forward and froze. Inside wasn't cash. It was teeth, dozens of them, yellowed, cracked, some small enough to be a child's. They were piled in neat stacks where bills should have been. I jerked back, breath catching. My vision wavered, and when I blinked, the drawer was filled with bills. Neat stacks of 20s and 5s. The man's eyes hadn't left mine. His smile hadn't moved an inch. "You'll pump yourself," he rasped. I nodded too quickly, muttered a thanks, and backed out of the store. The bell chimed again as the door shut behind me, the sound swallowed instantly by the desert silence. Mara was leaning against the car, arms crossed tight. "Everything good?" "Yeah," I lied. My voice cracked. "We're good." I shoved the nozzle into the tank, hit the lever. The pump whined weakly, clicked. Nothing flowed. I squeezed harder, jiggled the handle. Still nothing. "Great," I muttered, slamming it back into place. When I looked up, my stomach lurched. Across the lot, under the buzzing floodlight, another car sat parked. It was ours. Same dent in the bumper, same stickers on the rear window, but it was already parked. Engine off. And through the windshield, I saw us. Me in the driver's seat, Mara in the passenger side, both sitting perfectly still, staring straight ahead. Mara's fingernails dug into my arm before I realized she was standing right next to me. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. I couldn't answer. My throat had closed tight, because as I stared, the me in the other car slowly turned its head, and its eyes locked directly onto mine. For a long, awful moment, I couldn't move. My body knew I should run, but my legs were rooted, trembling, refusing to listen. The figure in the other car, or the other me, didn't break eye contact. Its head was cocked just slightly, the way you tilt your head when you're studying something under glass. Mara's grip on my arm tightened until it hurt, but she didn't scream. She didn't move either. It was as though both of us had been locked in place by that stare. Then, as if on some unseen cue, the double Mara in the other car turned her head too. Her face was slack, mouth closed tight, eyes unblinking. But the motion was synchronized, deliberate, like it had been waiting for me to notice. I stumbled backward first, tearing my gaze away. My shoulder hit the pump with a clang that jolted me into action. "Get in the car," I hissed, my voice cracked. "Now." Mara didn't argue. We bolted, shoes crunching on gravel. I yanked the driver's door open, threw myself inside, and twisted the key. The engine groaned, wheezed, then fell silent. Dead. I tried again, pumping the pedal, begging under my breath. Nothing. The dashboard stayed black. The headlights didn't even flicker. Mara's breathing was fast, panicked. "It's not starting." "I know," I barked, slamming my palm against the wheel. Then I saw movement in the rear view. The other car's doors were opening, both of them. Slowly. In unison. I don't remember deciding to run. My body acted before my brain could catch up. I threw the door open and grabbed Mara's hand, yanking her across the lot toward the station's building. The gravel underfoot seemed to stretch forever. The crunch of our steps echoed too loud, bouncing back at us like the sound was delayed. Behind us, I heard the other doors shut, a sound too precise, too clean. We stumbled through the entrance, the bell chiming weakly as the door swung shut. The same rotten fruit stench hit us. The same shelves sagged under dusty products. The same man stood at the counter, smile plastered on his face. Except now there were 3 of him. One behind the register, one standing beside the magazine rack, one blocking the hallway that led to what should have been bathrooms. All of them identical. Same slicked back hair, same grease-stained shirt, same glassy eyes locked on us. Mara gagged. I shoved her behind me, backing toward the shelves. "What do you want from us?" I demanded. My voice shook but came out louder than I intended. The man at the register blinked slowly. His smile never changed. "To keep you," he rasped. The shelves rustled. I whipped my head around and nearly lost my footing. We weren't alone. In the aisles scattered between stacks of dusty products stood people, or things that looked like people. Their clothes were out of place, faded jeans, old sundresses, polyester suits. Their skin was ashen, dry, as though sun-baked for years. None of them moved. They just stood facing the shelves, heads tilted down, hands slack at their sides. For a second, I thought they were mannequins, until one of them, a woman in a pale yellow dress, lifted her head. Her eyes were clouded white. Her jaw opened with a soft crack, and Mara's voice came out. "Run." I grabbed Mara's hand again and shoved down the nearest aisle. Boxes toppled as we clipped the shelves. My shoulder slammed into a rack of soda bottles that looked decades old, the plastic splitting, spraying sticky brown liquid across the floor. It stank of rot, fizzing unnaturally as it hit the tile. The door loomed ahead. I lunged for it, yanking it open, desperate for the outside. But it wasn't outside. It was another gas station. The same pumps, the same lot, the same buzzing floodlight. And parked under it were dozens of cars, all identical to ours. Rows of them, stretching out into the desert night. In each one, a pair of figures sat perfectly still. Us, Mara and me, staring straight ahead. I staggered back, nearly slipping in the sticky soda. Mara's nails dug into my arm hard enough to draw blood. "This isn't real," she whispered. "This isn't..." But her voice caught. Because in one of the cars, the other Mara was moving. She was turning slowly, painfully, like a puppet on tangled strings. Her head jerked toward us, eyes fixing on Mara with perfect precision. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. The air in the station was thick, heavy, full of that rotten sweetness. My vision swam. I thought I'd faint, until the register man's voice cut through, sharp and close. "You can't leave." I whipped around. He was standing right behind us now, teeth bared in that wrong smile. His breath was sour and damp against my cheek. I shoved him hard. He didn't stumble. He didn't even move an inch, as though his body was bolted to the floor. Then, impossibly, another version of him was suddenly beside me, fingers digging cold into my wrist. And another was blocking Mara's path to the door. We ran again, but the station had shifted. The aisles were longer, the shelves higher, bending upward until they scraped the ceiling. The buzzing lights overhead flickered and popped, throwing us into brief moments of pitch black. Every time the light returned, more people were standing in the aisles, pale, unmoving, their heads turning just a fraction toward us. We stumbled past them, past racks of newspapers dated decades ago, past freezers fogged with condensation that smelled of rust. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. Still, the shelves stretched on and on. Finally, another door appeared at the end of the aisle. I didn't hesitate. I shoved through it. Not outside. Another gas station. But this time the lot wasn't empty. It was full. Hundreds of people stood shoulder to shoulder under the buzzing lights. Their faces were slack, eyes glazed, all of them identical to us. Rows of me, rows of Mara, every expression blank, every body perfectly still. Then, as one, they all turned their heads toward us. Mara screamed, a raw sound that ripped through the silence. I clutched her hand tighter, dragging her back into the store. The crowd outside didn't follow, but their eyes, our eyes, stayed fixed on us through the warped windows. We collapsed against a shelf, panting, sweat soaking my shirt. My vision blurred. Mara's nails dug crescents into my skin. Then the lights flickered again, and when they steadied, I was alone. Mara was gone. My heart stopped. I staggered to my feet, spinning. "Mara?" My voice cracked, desperate. No answer. I stumbled down the aisles, calling her name, tripping over boxes, knocking over magazines. My chest heaved, panic rising in my throat. Finally, I saw her. At the counter. She was standing in front of the register, back to me, shoulders stiff. Relief washed over me. I stumbled toward her, hand out. "Mara, thank God, come on." Then she turned. Her face was mine. The desert at night doesn't forgive mistakes. When you drive those stretches of Nevada highway after midnight, you start to feel like you're shrinking. Like the black around you is so huge, it could just swallow your little car whole. The only reason you don't lose your mind is the rhythm. Tires humming, yellow lines flashing by, headlights carving their narrow tunnel. I was deep in that rhythm when the road first reminded me we weren't alone. It was after midnight, and Route 50 was nothing but emptiness. They call it the loneliest road in America, and they aren't exaggerating. I hadn't seen a single car in hours. No gas stations, no houses, no street lamps. Just scrub brush, jagged ridges on the horizon, and stars that looked too close to be real. Jenna had been asleep beside me for a while. Her hoodie was pulled up around her head, and her cheek was pressed to the glass. Every few minutes she shifted, muttered something I couldn't hear, then fell quiet again. I didn't mind. I liked having the silence to myself. It gave me space to think, to imagine how we'd laugh about this drive when we got to Colorado. That's when I noticed the headlights. They were faint at first, 2 tiny dots way off in the mirror. After hours of empty road, I almost felt relieved, proof that someone else was dumb enough to be out here tonight. I adjusted my grip on the wheel and told myself it was no big deal. Cars catch up, cars pass, and life goes on. But this one didn't. 5 minutes later, the lights were closer. 10 minutes after that, they were still there, but not close enough to overtake, just steady, holding distance. I eased off the accelerator, letting my speed bleed down, waiting for them to fly by. The lights dimmed with me. I pressed harder on the gas, pushing 10 miles over the limit. The lights grew brighter. My stomach tightened. I tapped the brakes, a little 2-pump signal that meant, "Your turn, go ahead." The lights dipped and rose like the driver had tapped their own. Still no pass. The hair on my arm stood up. Another 10 minutes, and they hadn't moved. Not closer, not farther, just glued to my bumper. Jenna stirred beside me. She rubbed her eyes, blinked at the dash, then at me. "Why are you gripping the wheel like that?" "Look," I said, nodding at the side mirror. She twisted, squinting through the rear window. The glow burned steady against the black. "So, somebody else is headed east. They've been behind us for nearly an hour," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "Every time I speed up, they do. Every time I slow down, they match." Her expression shifted. She pulled her hoodie tighter, curling into herself. "Maybe they're nervous. Some people stick to taillights so they don't feel alone." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But my gut said otherwise. The gas gauge slipped closer to a quarter tank. My palms were damp against the wheel. I kept telling myself this was paranoia, that if I just ignored it, they'd vanish. But the headlights never wavered. Then they flashed. Once, twice. Not random, not an accident, a signal. "What the hell does that mean?" I muttered. Jenna's voice was barely audible. "I don't like this. Travis, whatever you do, don't stop." Her voice cracked, and that scared me worse than the lights. A sign appeared on the shoulder. "Rest area, 2 miles. Relief surged through me. A rest stop meant lights. Maybe vending machines. Maybe even another car. I slowed, signaling for the ramp. "Don't," Jenna snapped, her hand clamping onto my arm. "It's fine," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "Just a quick stop. Maybe they'll pass." Her nails dug in deeper. "Empty rest stops are where people vanish. Please, I'm begging you, don't pull in." I looked at her, then at the mirror. The lights flashed again. Once, twice. My throat tightened. I pressed the gas, blowing past the exit. The rest area vanished behind us. The lights stayed, steady as ever. By 2 a.m., I was unraveling. Every mile stretched like 10. My eyes burned from glancing at the mirrors too often. My jaw ached from clenching. Jenna was silent now, knees pulled to her chest, eyes locked on the glass like she was trying to bore holes through it. Then another sign. Gas, 1 mile. I nearly cried. We needed fuel anyway. If he followed us in, fine. At least we'd know what we were dealing with. The exit curved to a squat little station, lit by buzzing fluorescents. The pumps were old, the kind with rotating dials. The whole place looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. Okay, I muttered, forcing myself to breathe steady. We get gas. If he stops, we stay in the car. Door's locked. If he doesn't. Jenna cut me off, voice trembling. What if he gets out? I didn't answer. I swung into the pump, killed the engine, and shoved my card in with shaking hands. The pump coughed, clicked, and the numbers started rolling. My eyes never left the mirror. The truck rolled in behind us. Slow, deliberate. It parked at the far end of the lot, engine growling so low it seemed to vibrate the ground. The headlights burned into us. Through the glare, I saw him. A figure behind the wheel, broad shoulders, perfectly still, watching. Jenna cracked her window an inch, her breath ragged. He's not moving. He's just sitting there. Yeah, I muttered, yanking the nozzle free before the tank was half full. We've got enough. We're leaving. I jumped back into the driver's seat, fired the ignition, and tore out of the lot. Gravel sprayed behind us. My pulse hammered in my throat. In the mirror, the truck's lights blinked off, but I could still see his shape. And I swear, he was smiling. The desert swallowed us again, black and endless. The glow of the gas station shrank in the mirrors until it was just another smear of light against the night. I kept my eyes forward, forcing myself to breathe slow, but every nerve in my body screamed to look back. The headlights were gone now, but the image of him, broad shoulders, unmoving, smiling, was burned into me like a brand. For a mile, maybe two, I let myself believe it was over. Maybe he'd had his fun. Maybe he'd kill his engine, grab a nap, and by the time we hit the state line, he'd be nothing but a bad story. The road stretched ahead, empty, and for the first time in hours, I felt a flicker of relief. Then the brights hit. The mirror went white, blinding. Jenna screamed, clutching her face. My hands wrenched the wheel, swerving hard onto the shoulder. Gravel spat against the frame. The horn burst from me, sharp and useless. He was back, and closer than ever. The brights flicked off. On, off again, twice. The same deliberate signal. What the hell does he want? I yelled, voice cracking. Jenna was sobbing now, her voice shredded. He's not trying to pass Travis. He's playing with us. The truck loomed so close I could see the grill now, gleaming like a row of teeth. He rode our bumper for a mile, engine growling, the cab black as pitch. Then, without warning, he surged forward, pulling even with us. For one heartbeat, I thought he'd finally pass. Relief almost spilled from me. But he didn't. He held steady, hulking presence filling the driver's side window, less than 10 feet away. I couldn't see his face, not clearly, but I felt him. I felt his eyes pressing through the glass, stripping me bare. "Go faster," Jenna shrieked, clutching the dash. I slammed the pedal. 90, 95. The car rattled, tires whining. He matched perfectly. Then he swerved. The grill lunged across the lane, kissing the line. I yanked the wheel right. Our mirror missed his by inches. My body slammed against the seat. The car wobbled, skidding onto the shoulder, and I barely yanked it straight before we spun. "He's trying to run us off," Jenna screamed. The horn roared again, useless against the thunder of his engine. For half a mile, he stayed there, hulking giant, breathing down our side. Then with another roar, he surged past, the wash of his wake rocking us so hard the tires screamed. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe he'd had his fill. Then his brake lights flared red. He slowed, deliberately, waiting. My chest burned. My throat was raw. I couldn't stop shaking. "He's not leaving," I said. "He's not going to leave." Jenna had curled against the door, her knees pulled up, eyes wild. "He's not going to stop, Travis. He's going to keep doing this until—" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. The truck shrank ahead of us, then drifted onto the shoulder. For one fragile breath, I thought he'd pulled over. Then he swung back into the lane behind us. The lights flared, burning white into the mirror. I wanted to pull over. I wanted to stop, to end this insane game. But the desert offered nothing. No exits, no houses, no witnesses. Just him. Always him. The chase blurred into madness. He'd fall back, dots in the mirror, only to surge up again minutes later, filling every inch of glass with chrome and rage. Sometimes he drifted onto the shoulder, sparks spitting, daring me to test him. Sometimes he drifted so close I swore I felt the heat of his engine. The brights came in bursts, searing our retinas, pulsing like some sick heartbeat. The gas gauge dipped toward empty again. My vision blurred from exhaustion, from terror. Jenna was rocking silently, her face pale, lips moving like she was praying. Then the sign appeared. Rest area 1 mile. "We can't," Jenna gasped. "We can't go in there." I shook my head, voice shaking. "We don't have a choice. We're running out." Her nails dug into me. "Travis, he wants you to. He wants you alone." The ramp appeared. My hands turned the wheel like they didn't belong to me. The rest area was worse than the first. 1 flickering lamp, 2 cracked vending machines humming weakly. A row of picnic tables swallowed in shadow. Not a single other car. I rolled to a stop, engine ticking. My chest heaved like I'd run miles. The truck pulled in behind us, and this time he killed the engine. The silence that followed was worse than the roar. For a long, terrible moment, nothing moved. Then the driver's door creaked open. Jenna's scream tore through the car. "Go! Go, Travis, go!" But I froze. My body wouldn't listen. The silhouette climbed out tall and heavy. He stood in the glow of the dying lamp, face shadowed. Then he started walking. Slow, steady, straight toward us. My hands found the shifter, slamming the car into reverse. Tires screamed against gravel. The headlights caught him for 1 terrible second. A man in dark clothes, hair slicked back, eyes locked on us, smile stretched too wide. I floored it. The car jerked backward, nearly fishtailing. He didn't run, didn't flinch, just stopped, hands at his sides, smile never fading. I whipped the wheel, tires spitting gravel, and shot back onto the ramp. The car lurched, engine screaming. Behind us, the truck's headlights flared back to life. He was coming again. For another hour, it was hell. He chased us down every stretch, blocked exits, swerved, brake-checked, toyed with us. My arms shook so hard I could barely keep the car straight. Jenna had gone silent again. Her nails dug so deep into her palms they bled. Then, just before dawn, the road narrowed into a construction zone. Concrete barriers hemmed us in. No shoulders, no escape. The headlights swelled in the mirrors, closer, closer. The grill filled the glass, chrome teeth grinning. He leaned on the horn, a sound like the end of the world, and surged forward. I screamed, jerking the wheel, but there was nowhere to go. The barriers closed in. His bumper kissed ours, once, twice, shoving us forward. Jenna shrieked. The car jolted, tires shrieking against the concrete. The last thing I remember is the sound. Metal screaming against metal. The world flipping. Jenna's scream cut short. And through it all, the horn, the tires, the crunch of steel. I swore I heard him laughing.